Good morning. Thank you for joining me for another 5 good minutes with the Word. I'm Barry Bryson, and we're continuing our study of Rachel as part of our greater study of matriarchs, the women we come to know in the book of Genesis. And we're talking today about Rachel and her desperate need to have a child, her infertility, and finally her giving birth to a child. And this is recorded in Genesis chapter 30, verses 14 through 24. Now, in the days of the wheat harvest, Reuben went and found mandrakes in the field and brought them to his mother Leah. And Rachel said to Leah, "Please give me some of your son's mandrakes." She said to her, "Is it a small matter for you to take my husband? And would you take my son's mandrakes also?" So Rachel said, "Therefore he may lie with you tonight in return for your son's mandrakes." When Jacob came in from the field in the evening, then Leah went out to meet him and said, "You must come in to me tonight, for surely I have paid for your services with my son's mandrakes." So he slept with her that night. And God gave heed to Leah, and she conceived and bore Jacob a fifth son. And Leah said, "As God has given me my wages, because I have gave my maid to my husband." So she named him Issachar. And Leah conceived again and bore a sixth son to Jacob. And Leah said, "God has endowed me with a good gift, and now my husband will dwell with me because I have borne him 6 sons." She named him Zebulun. And afterward she bore a daughter and named her Dinah. Then God remembered Rachel, and God gave heed to her, and opened her womb, and she conceived and bore a son, and said, "God has taken away my reproach." And she named him Joseph, saying, "May Yahweh give me another son." Okay, it is such a remarkable event that we're going to look at it again, but we're going to look at it in terms of Rachel's role in it. Um, so, Reuben, who at this point is grown. So, if Reuben, let's say, is 16, 17, 20 years old at this point, um, if Reuben is this age, someone old enough to go out into the field at the wheat harvest and to be a working man in the harvest, 16, 17 years old, maybe a little older, then they've been married, these two women, to their husband about 17, 18 years. Now, they waited 7 years to marry him. And so they were both in their early 20s. Both these women are now pushing 40. They just are. Um, and we're past the time when people have extended and expanded lifespans. And even with Moses and Sarah, both of whom lived to be beyond 100 years old, um, they seem to be in having a normal human lifespan in terms of when the bearing of children is possible and the fathering of children is possible. And so these women are now getting towards the end of their childbearing age. Let's point that out as we begin. Mandrake root was and continues to be an important medicinal root. And you can look it up online. It probably has a lot of positive properties. Everything that God gives us has its own use. But mandrake was because the mandrake root has looks like it has arms and legs like a human. Was associated with all different kinds of medicinal properties, especially fertility. And so, when Reuben found some, Rachel asks politely to Leah, "Please give me some of your son's mandrakes." And she said to her, "Is it a small matter for you to take my husband? You're going to take my son's mandrakes too." Leah is still, this is as much about Leah as it is about Rachel. The hurt is still there. Um, and and she just says, "No, no, not for nothing. No." Um, and so Rachel, who is desperate to have her own children, says, I tell you what, and naming the price is itself, as much an insult as Leah's insult. No, not for nothing. You got to pay for this. And she says, okay, I'll pay for it. You can have his sexual favors for tonight. That's what I'll pay. And they strike a bargain. And one wife prostitutes the husband to the other wife. And she goes out and meets him as he's coming in from the field with the other men, maybe even with some of their sons, and says, listen, buddy, I paid for your services. You have to sleep in my tent tonight. Now, the text makes clear that the mandrakes have absolutely nothing to do with anybody having any babies, because the person who gets pregnant is not the one with the mandrakes, it's the one who sold the mandrakes for a night with her husband. And she has not only one more child, but then a second child later on, another son, giving her 6 sons, 8 if you count the 2 from Zilpah, and then a daughter, they named Dinah. And it's only after all of this, having nothing to do with mandrakes, that God remembers Rachel, because God's in control. Jacob may not exercise agency in terms of these women, but he does know that God's in control, which he said to Rachel at the beginning of this chapter. You're not mad at me, you're mad at God. He's the one who decides when babies are born. God remembered Rachel, gave heed to her after all these years, gave heed to her, opened her womb, and she conceived and bore a son. And she said, God's finally taken away my reproach. So does she name him anything to having to do with that? No. She names him Give Me More. Joseph's name is based, Yasaf is a Hebrew noun that means to add up, to add or to multiply, to get more and more and more, to add more and more and more. And that's what she says. Give me more and more and more. I have a lot of catching up to do. That's what she says. Okay. Anyway, that's verse 24. We're going to talk about Jacob's bargain with Laban next time. And in verse 25, we'll pick up there. Thank you for joining me for another 5 good minutes with the Word.